I'm going to admit to you, religion is big business. Now, you may not be able to tell it from us, but it is. It is big business to facilitate worship and manage programs in the millions of churches, congregations, and worship spaces all across the world. All kinds of products and services must be purchased. For better or for worse, a lot of money gets exchanged and a lot of profits made in the practice of religion. Now, there is nothing necessarily bad or wrong about that, but we are seeing in the business of religion what I heard Reverend Dr. William Barber say yesterday on television. It sounded so good, but he was talking about our tendency in religion, and he said far too often cash comes before Christ. And it is a sad feature of Christian commercialism that Jesus can be and has been claimed, packaged, sold, and withheld for the express purpose of making some people very, very wealthy. I'm not, don't get me wrong, I'm not making this up. You can check it out. Some preachers actually charge for access to Jesus. Again, I'm not making it up. There's some televangelists that have private jets. You don't get that by having a free service. You've heard the appeals for people to send so much money for prayer cloths or to get a blessing. Again, there is nothing necessarily bad or wrong about asking for support for a ministry. After all, we could not do this ministry without asking for some financial support. But I think it behooves all of us in religion to ask ourselves, is the purpose of ministry to get contributions, or is the purpose of ministry to spread the gospel? Periodically, we should ask ourselves this. In his ministry, Jesus would encounter this tension between the purposes of faith and religion and the business of faith and religion. And in the Gospel of John, after Jesus performs the first sign of turning vast amounts of water into wine, a display that Jesus loves abundance. Jesus is not stingy. Jesus loves abundance. He turned vast amounts of water into wine, more than any of them would ever need, more than any could drink at any one time. So Jesus understands abundance. But when Jesus makes the pilgrimage to Jerusalem for the Passover, he encounters the business of religion. And what he sees right away concerns him. He sees business. He does not see the devotion or the worship of an encounter with God. He sees merchants selling cattle, sheep, and doves to the faithful for the festival sacrifices. He sees the money changers exchanging Roman and foreign currency into the currency of the temple so that the faithful can purchase the animals for sacrifice. And Jesus' reaction is explosive and dramatic. You know, Jesus had a flair for the dramatic. Because obviously for Jesus, there is something unseemly and unbecoming about the way the religious authorities are handling worship. And he is determined to stop it. It must have been in his mind, is this about business or is this about faith? And so Jesus must have come to the conclusion that this is more about business. So he's determined to stop it. He makes a whip. He drives the animals out of the temple. He overturns the table. He pours out the coins of the money changers. He yells at them, take these things out of here. And he says, stop turning God's house into a marketplace. In the slang here, Jesus wrecks shop. Or as my parents would say, Jesus cuts up in church. There's no way to dress it up. Jesus acted out. But the question is, why would Jesus make such a scene in church? Why would Jesus cut up? And so we get the sense. Jesus says, stop making it into a marketplace. Stop turning this into something that is about business rather than about faith. And by wrecking the marketplace, by wrecking the marketplace in the temple, Jesus also wrecks business as usual. Jesus interrupts the commoditization of faith. Jesus wants it to get back to encountering God. And the religious authorities wanted to know, who is he to do this? What sign can Jesus show for interrupting how religion is practiced in the temple? You see, here's what I can see. I can see the religious, I know, I get it. It's something that we all have to be careful about. The religious authorities were so busy keeping the wheels of commerce turning that they missed the sign. They were asking for a sign, but they missed the sign. They had become so invested in their encounter with consumers, they missed the encounter with God. What sign can Jesus show for acting out this way? What sign? Jesus is the sign. Oh, you were supposed to respond to that. What sign can you show for doing this? Jesus is the sign. And they didn't see it. They didn't see it. Jesus tells them to destroy this temple. I can imagine Jesus saying, destroy this temple. Destroy this sanctuary. And in 3 days, I will raise it up. Oh, but they had real estate on their minds. Oh, this temple is grand. How can you destroy the temple? But I can see Jesus' hand movements. Destroy this temple. They missed the sign. He was pointing to himself. He was pointing to his body. His body was the temple, and thus the sign they were looking for. The sign in the person of Jesus, the one who was acting out in church, the one who was standing right before them. In the person of Jesus, God was present. What Jesus did in the temple is popularly known as the cleansing of the temple, and some version of this story is found in all 4 Gospels. And when the story is found in all 4 Gospels, it's something about it. There's some historical antecedent. Some version of them actually must have happened. But only in John's version does this story occur in the beginning of Jesus' ministry. The Gospel is clear here in its witness to who Jesus is. John wants people to see, hear, know, and believe that Jesus is who we are told Jesus is. The one who in the beginning was the Word. The one who was with God in the beginning. The one who was God. So right before them was God. And so what that means is you don't have to buy anything because God is right there. You didn't clap as loud as I wanted to, but let's keep going. If the religious authorities had believed in the witness of John, if they had opened themselves up to see, they would have understood that the Word made flesh was right there. They would have seen in him the true light that enlightens everyone. They would have received him and trusted in his work. They would have known that in him God was pleased to dwell, such that right there in the temple was the very presence of God, that Jesus himself makes God known. There is no need right now to purchase cattle, sheep, or doves for sacrifice because God was right there. There is no need to shop for God or use any means of exchange to experience God because God was right there to be experienced. You see, we live in a day. Let's take it up to where we are. We live in a day right now where just about our entire existence is framed and conditioned by trade, commerce, and transaction. We can buy and sell anything, and just about anything we want is available for purchase. If you don't believe it, go to Amazon and just put anything there. Put sheep in there. You can buy a sheep. Put anything in Amazon searching. You can buy it. So you can buy anything that you want. Now, we also know that religion is not exempt from this shopping. We can now shop for a church. You can look anything you're looking for. If I make you mad, or if I don't dress like you want me to dress, if I don't say what you want me to say, you can get online and you can shop for any church you want to. So now we can shop for God. But here's the thing. I want you to consider this. If all we do is shop for the things of God, we are likely to miss an encounter with God. If we get too invested in the business of religion, we're likely to miss the experience that can come with a religion that is focused on the very presence of God. If we get too focused on trying to purchase the trappings and the commodities of religion, we are likely to miss the transformation that comes with a relationship with Jesus. The purpose of this sanctuary is worship. I don't know if you heard the choir singing it. The purpose of this sanctuary is to worship. The purpose of worship is to see God, to experience God, to ascribe power to God. Be surprised that Jesus would respond so explosively to the buying and selling going on in the temple. I often wonder what Jesus would think about our worship service. I wonder, what would Jesus say if Jesus walked in and sat among us? Well, here's the thing. I'll tell you this. Jesus has been walking in here ever since you've been coming here. It's trying to reveal God to us each and every day. And so I am so glad that Jesus wrecked shop. I'm glad Jesus cut up in the temple. I'm glad he acted out in church because now we know that Jesus does not charge admission for access to God. We now know that we don't have to be rich to experience the life and abundance that God gives. You say, Pastor, how do you know? I know because I can just keep reading. Because right there, I know because Nicodemus, in the next chapter of John, Nicodemus comes to Jesus looking for answers. And Jesus said, for God so loved the world that God gave the only Son. Let me say it again. God so loved the world that God gave, not God sold you the Son. God gave it freely. God gave the Son that we may have eternal life. I know because there was a woman at the well who met Jesus, and he gave her living water such that she would never thirst again, and she didn't have to pay one dime for it. I know because Jesus touched a man born blind and gave him physical sight and spiritual insight, and he did not have to pay 1 red cent for the privilege. The presence of God is free and unfettered. I know, because 5,000 people who heard about the signs Jesus was doing followed him into the wilderness. And when they got hungry, Jesus didn't buy food, but took 5 loaves and 2 fish from someone who had it, and he didn't charge them a tab, tax, or tip. It does not cost. There's no finances, no financial price to be in God's presence. You don't have to pay for it. Now, one caveat. Do not leave here thinking that I'm saying that there is something wrong with buying or selling, or that I'm saying something is wrong with exercising the privilege of enjoying the fruit of your labor and the benefits of money earned and saved. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying that the people that Jesus encountered in that temple, they failed to keep the main thing the main thing. They failed to understand that the people who were coming there for a blessing from the Lord were not just consumers. They were the people of God looking to be blessed by God. And they almost missed it. And my hope is that when we gather in this sanctuary, we see ourselves less as consumers and more as seekers after Jesus. My hope is that we dispense with the business of religion long enough to embrace the renewal of relationship that's possible because Jesus is present in our midst. My hope is that we would choose to be in relationship with Jesus, trusting that the Word made flesh is already there, rather than trying to buy our way into some kind of spiritual experience. And my hope is that no matter how much the world around us invests in the business of religion, that we know that Jesus is not a commodity to be packaged, marketed, or sold, but that we bear witness that Jesus embraced all of us as beloved. We keep those doors wide open for all who will come and know the love of God. Yeah, Jesus cut up in church. But because he did, we know that all we need come with is ourselves and give ourselves freely. That's the whole thrust of the Gospel of John. That we trust that Jesus is who Jesus says he is, so that we can become united with God once again. That in the very presence of Jesus, we are in the presence of God, and that God beckons us back home. Amen.